Hello and welcome to Health Matters on Channels Television. Thanks for joining us. I am Mary Alale Yusuf. Many Nigerians now know that suicide is a problem in the country. According to the World Health Organization, about 800,000 people die by suicide globally every year. 79% of these are in low and middle income countries. That's over 630,000 cases. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds. For every suicide brought to completion, there are several other failed attempts. Experts say suicides can be prevented. We'd like to explore how. Joining me on the program today is a consultant psychiatrist at Life Crest Rehabilitation Center in Lagos, Dr. Ogonnaya Ndupu. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mary, for having me.
Are we putting our young people under too much pressure? Why is 15 to 29 the danger space, so to speak?
I would say yes. From research, we know that there are more academic pressures, and this is one of the reasons why people within this age bracket appear to have attempted or are contemplating suicide. Maybe you also know that the economic situation in this country, there's a lot of unemployment, you're out of school, it's a whole lot, the burden of no gainful employment, that's the stressor. And then we know from statistics that most mental health illnesses usually have started before age 14, but are not detected. So it's not surprising that those who commit suicide, or it's more prevalent amongst people 15 to 29. We also know that 90% of suicide cases had a mental illness.
Aha.
Yes.
So that must be one of
the relationship.
Risk factors in
Yes.
mental illness.
Yes.
Okay. What other risk factors are we looking at here?
When we say mental illness as a risk factor, I would probably want to break it down to the number one culprit. It will be depression. There's also the issue of substance use, increases the risk of suicide.
A very, very serious issue now.
Yes, yes. That also increases the risk of suicide. Other risk factors for suicide includes the family history. For instance, if there's been a suicide in the family, the likelihood of another suicide is higher.
Is it because they have the same kind of makeup, or family members just feel more comfortable with the idea?
We know that post-mortem studies of people who had committed suicide show there were abnormalities in the brain.
Okay.
And then there's a role of genetics, or what we call biological factors. So there may be something that had predisposed them to probably depression, very commonly. And so it's not unusual. And then there's this idea that if somebody in the family commits suicide, it more like even, it gives other people may not, it may, you know, the issue of copycats, repeats.
Yes. So it's like it becomes a bit more appealing to them.
Yes, that was the word I was trying, yes, that's also a possibility. But beyond that, we know that there's a genetic history of mental health vulnerability already, maybe existing, not detected. That could increase the likelihood of that.
But of course, it's not just mental health that stands as a risk factor for suicide.
No, not only. Some people may not have mental health issues. Sudden loss, job loss, relationship issues, suddenly. And then for some other people who have impulsive issues, impulsive type of personalities, they are quick to act. Another risk we know is lack of easy availability to mental health services. It's a risk factor.
Really?
Yes. Because a lot of people are not...
I thought that would be good.
No, when you're not able to assess mental health, that's what I mean.
Not being able to assess
mental health. Yes, not being able to assess mental health. So someone may have had mental health issues. There's a need to seek medical or mental health, services. And whether because of stigma or other factors, availability, accessibility of these centers, you don't seek help. That may be a risk factor.
What are detectable signs that someone might be contemplating suicide? Because for you to take someone to the hospital, you have to first know or suspect that there's a problem. What are parents looking at, children looking at, friends looking at as detectable signs to seize on and say this person needs help?
Top on the list, I would say a change in behavior, a change in mood. Someone who probably was very outgoing becomes a bit withdrawn to self, what we'd call social withdrawal. There may be signs that the person over time is losing interest in things around. When it comes to suicide, there are 3 stages. Stage 1 is the contemplation.
Okay. It's just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's just thinking about it. Stage 2 has to do with ambivalence. Now, should I not? Should I not? At this time, before you move to a stage 3, where the act is committed, for some people, they may move so fast from stage 1 to stage 3 in 1 week.
1 week?
Yes. Yes.
That's a very short time to find out what's going on.
Some months, yes. It's very possible, depending on several factors. Your personality, what may be the other risk factor, or what are the precipitating factors at that point in time. I have seen people lose loved ones, and the next thing,
they are gone.
Yes, because they can't deal with this. So that may be a short window from the point where they started contemplating to. But for some, what we see over time, it had lingered. They have the symptoms of loss of interest. And some, you even notice what looks like a reckless behavior. They seem to care very little about life. They begin to act irresponsible in
take
quotes,
risks.
Take unnecessary, reckless risks. And you begin to wonder, this is not this person, what really is going on. And for others, you may see an increase in substance use than what it used to be.
But you know, many parents do not know what substance use looks like. I've heard stories of parents who say, no, my child. Meanwhile, he's been using for a long time. And what makes it worse is that people leave at the crack of dawn in the morning and come back late at night, kids are sleeping. What is one to do?
I would say another issue with that is some parents are in denial. They do not want to talk about these issues. They shut their ears to the happenings around them. The adolescent, the young people in the home, they are moving on. There are signs when people are in drug abuse, whatever the substance, be it your prescription, be it narcotics, you find there's a change in person. Sometimes it could be in their grooming.
Okay.
Sometimes it could even be a decline in functioning. Someone who over time has given priority to substance use. You notice grades are falling. You may notice a change in friends. He begins to keep a type of friend. Very like for cannabis that is commonly abused. You notice the smell. You notice the red eyes. You notice some unusual irrational behavior for some. These are things.
Red eyes.
Unusual. Usually sometimes we see I get complaints that he's always looking dazed. I can't place what it is.
Okay.
When they go on the prescription, the opiates, they have these. I've had clients who suddenly become over-energetic. And then they begin to wonder, what's this hyperactivity in quotes? You used to be very calm and all that. These signs are usually
Yet
there.
some are very energetic and suddenly become calm.
Yes.
It's tricky.
Yes, it's very tricky. You know, when I was talking about stages of suicide, at the last stage where the act is committed, you may notice someone who probably had been at the point of where he's or she is a bit ambivalent, risky lifestyle, reckless living, and when they're getting to the stage 3, there's this unusual calmness.
Okay, because they've made up their minds now.
At that point, they have everything had been well planned out. This is how I intend. Unusual calmness. So sometimes relatives just interpret that to, okay, he used to talk about being tired of life, but suddenly appears doing well. And then for some other people, you notice they begin to say farewell in subtle manners.
Okay.
Send messages, begin to approach their loved ones. For some, suicide notes. For others, they may not even go as far as selling you suicide note. They just begin to give out things and say, you can keep this in case you don't see me. Those are subtle ways to know that this person may be contemplating suicide or is very close to taking an action.
Another question before we go on break. Those people who attempt and doesn't work, is that deliberate? Were they planning that it shouldn't work or something went wrong?
From experience as a psychiatrist, Mary, majority of cases I have seen in the course of my practice, they didn't really want to die.
Okay.
They wanted to end the pain. There's a pain they are going through. I forgot to mention another risk factor for suicide may be a chronic illness.
Okay.
You
Yes,
see
they just
people
want
with
to end it
chronic
all.
cancer, sickle cell, things that they feel, I can't go on like this. And they genuinely wanted to end the pain. And so, did whatever methods they devise to ending this pain, they make an attempt. I have met people who said, I regret being alive. I wish it had worked.
Wow.
Yes. So very rare do we see people who just, there's something we call a cry for help.
Okay.
Somebody
Maybe the person
who
is
is
trying
trying
to
to
get
slash,
attention.
yes, slashing your wrist, or there are things, cutting yourself. There are things that would suggest
So
that there is
that's what
something
it is.
ongoing.
That's like a cry for help.
Yes, that's a cry for help. For sometimes, for those who have not been able to get themselves to the point where they are determined
But
to
do
take
we
this
have
action.
cutters in Nigeria? You know, my opinion of Nigeria is really being knocked about. Were they strong people who could handle things before? Do we have cutters,
We do.
slashers?
We do. In practice, I still see them. And I know for a lot of other colleagues the same. We still see these people, and these people over time, they are just, they can't, for some reasons, spiritual, religious affiliations or beliefs, I can't take this final step. Each time they are doing this, because, and for some of them, there's a need to end the pain, and some of them feel, if I inflict more pain, I would feel better. I've had people tell me that when I inflict pain on myself, it lessens the emotional pain I feel.
Okay.
Yes.
But that isn't true, you know.
That's the interpretation. That isn't true. We talk about one suicide every 40 seconds. Now, this is what the true picture is. Every 40 seconds, someone is successful at ending his life. There are 20 to 25 other people somewhere in the world taking the same act.
But they didn't quite make it.
Yes.
Something you said there interested me. You said that some people really get to the edge. But because of something they believe in, maybe their religion or something,
Yes.
they can't take that final step. So maybe one of the tricks to keeping them on this side of life is to instill something like that in them, right? Something that will stop them.
Yes. That's the rule. That's where, when it comes to prevention, that's part of what we try to do. Getting religious leaders, people who we call the gatekeepers. These are people who get in contact with these victims. Not very often would you see one walk to a psychiatrist. They may present to their spiritual leaders if these people are able to help them, because we know these to be protective factors against suicide. So you are able to help them and hold on to the little faith they have left that, oh, whatever my difficulties right now, it would pass. And then particularly for our religious beliefs that would, most of the religious bodies, systems would believe that if you end your life this way, you may not be going to
You may not be so fortunate on the other side of life.
That's why.
Let's quickly take a break. Stay with us. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Call 0808-054-2233 to get in your questions about suicide. You can also tweet at CTV_Mary A. We're going to prevention now. Let's be very practical. You're a mom. You have a 6'2" tall son, muscular, and he wants to commit suicide. You've just discovered that he's about to do it. What do you do? How do you help? How do you get help?
As simple as sitting there to talk to this person, keep that person engaged. This is not the time to say, you know, we can be very dramatic in this country. Why? What's your reason? thinking that everything is fine with this person. All they probably want to do, they may want to vent. You may just need to just keep quiet and hear this person out.
Okay.
As simple
Can
as
he
that.
just vent, then run out of steam and change his mind?
Yes, yes, that's possible. While you're trying to do that, if there was a way you could reach out to someone to get help for you, call. Yes.
Then of course there are certain numbers.
Yes, I'm engaging with this person who is about to attempt suicide. At the same time, I'm sure if there's a way I can alert others, we need to call a number, we need to reach out for help, and find a way, if possible, restrain and take this person to seek help. You need to be seen to be offering help. Help for us may be support. Help may be, okay, can I walk you to where you would see someone? Support may be, I will just want to hear you out. I want to know. And then sometimes the reasons why people attempt suicide are things that people around can help.
Can help them with, but they don't know.
Yes. And so sometimes it may just mean you going out of your way. You say, oh, is that why you want to kill yourself? I can help. I can help you get a job. You don't need to give up.
So it could be as easy as changing the orientation of the person.
But you must allow, give yourself, you must be patient enough to listen to them while you're doing that. If there are numbers, you can quickly call out to reach out for help. But you know, most suicides, people do not know. They only, they just get discovered.
Okay. Assuming you do discover before it happens and you call a number, what happens? Does the person engage him or her over the phone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's how it starts. Yes. From a phone conversation, you reach out to the helplines. You know, earlier we're talking about suicide research and prevention initiative that is ongoing.
They have some hotlines.
They have hotlines.
Even some in Hausa.
Yes, some in Hausa. They would get a lot more out in other languages where people can reach and not minding what language you speak. Hopefully for now, you can speak in Hausa and there'll be somebody at the other end of the line who would engage you. The same thing someone else may not be able to do one-on-one. They may engage you and keep you engaged on the line while we try to reach out to family, the immediate setup, and say, okay, you need to move this person to the hospital. You can't, so always just attempting suicide. You can't leave the person alone, you understand that. So
let's quickly, let me just butt in there. Neka is on the line. Hello, Neka. Have we lost? We've lost Neka. Okay, go on with that.
Yes, so at the point where they have reached the hotline, we are making arrangements. Support is what arrangements we need to move this person, because if an individual is attempting suicide now, he needs to be moved to a safe environment. Okay. Knowing that, and then in a safe environment, that's a different ball game. There's intensive monitoring, be it in a hospital most especially, because he's still very much at a risk of suicide.
Okay, somebody actually committed suicide. I'm going to paraphrase what he put in his note before he left. He said something to the effect that his mental health was on life support. And life support is too expensive. So, okay, thanks everybody, you tried, but you know, I'm going out. So what are we missing? But before we go there, let's take this call. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing, Adebayo? What's your question?
Yeah, I'm calling from Ogun State.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and the topic is very, very much interesting.
Thank you.
I'd like to contribute.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Doctor, good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon, Adebayo.
Yeah, I love the ways and manners you answer questions, and I love the reasons you give. And most of the reasons are quite true. Okay. Because I can still remember in my area, I think sometimes early this year, guy commit the same that you are talking about now by taking sniper. Oh. Right, even in the presence of his wife and 2 children. Why? Because of financial problem. He had nobody to help him. So his senior brother works in a bank. Such a kind of stingy kind of senior brother he had to discuss with him. Now he ended up picking up his life by himself. What a big tragedy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think if he had somebody to talk to, call for help, assuming his brother could even talk to him like the the doctor has rightly said, listen to him attentively, hear him out, at least give him a little something, even convincing him, look, I'll get you a job, don't worry. This is not the end of the world. At least if you have a problem, that does not mean you can never be free. Upgoing again, or you can never stand up again. But this brother is a kind of I don't care kind of brother of the that is junior to the junior brother had to take his life.
Thank you so much, Adebayo. Sorry, we'll have to cut you there. But it can be as simple as that.
Yes.
Just talk to. And his brother was a banker.
Yes.
Look at that.
Yes.
There was actually hope that he couldn't see. So back to this suicide note. I'm just asking, what are we missing here? In this person's case, people had spoken to him because his note said, you tried. Thank you so much. You spoke, you encouraged me and everything. But you know, it can't go on forever. And then he goes out. So what was wrong?
What was wrong in that case? You know, at every point, these I'll probably direct to professionals, both medical and mental. At every point where we get to see someone who had attempted suicide, from research, we know that with every suicide attempt, the person is still very likely to have a successful repeat of that attempt in 1 year.
Okay.
A time frame in 1 year.
So you have to put a special watch
yes,
on that person.
Regular follow-up. And when we say watch, you know, it's both ways. I, as a professional, with the help of the family. So because when he leaves my office, he leaves his session, there's a need for someone also to follow up at the other end. So people like this should have been closely monitored for this long. And we keep, yes, we know, and World Health Organization still tells us that suicide is preventable. I do not know what this individual meant about being on life support. It could have been depression, it could have been, I know.
No, he said his mental health was on life support.
Life support. That's what I'm saying. Mental health on life support. Probably he had mental health challenges that were a bit overwhelming. And I'm just wondering, what's the worst case scenario? There's treatments. So that's why even when we meet people who have attempted suicide or they present to us, we know that there's a place for drug treatment.
Okay,
we
Neka
find
is
this
back
to be
on
helpful.
the line. Let's try and get her. Okay. Hello, Neka.
Hello.
Ah, you're there. What's your question? You're welcome.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Good
I
afternoon.
want to direct my question to the doctor. Can you hear me?
Go right
Yes, we
ahead.
can.
Yes.
All right, yeah. A close friend of mine showed signs of depression, and we were encouraged to see a clinical psychologist. So I want to know if the clinical psychologists do the same thing as the psychiatrist. I'm referring my question to Dr. Nduku.
Okay, thank you so much, Neka.
Can I respond
Psychologist,
to that?
psychiatrist, please go right ahead.
They work closely together, yes. For somebody who is depressed, that we know is a risk factor for even becoming suicidal. Yes, the patient may benefit from what we call cognitive behavioral therapy,
Okay.
which the psychologist will get to offer. But somewhere along the line, there may be a need to also have the expertise of a psychiatrist, because there's a place for drug treatment, what we call pharmacotherapy. They would need drugs, antidepressants. So they usually work closely.
The psychiatrist is the one who has gone through medical school, right?
Yes.
The psychologist, what about the psychologist?
Not very often. First, for the psychiatrists, they are first medical doctors who decided to specialize in mental health.
Okay.
But a clinical psychologist, not necessarily.
But
a
this is
medical
not a
doctor.
time for grandstanding. They should work together.
Yes, they must
so
work together.
Neka, that would be a psychiatrist then.
So if this individual is seeing a good clinical psychologist, they know, they're experienced, so they know when to say, you know what, I
Let
would
me
need a
refer
colleague.
you
Yes,
to someone else.
Yes, they may refer you, and then they know there's a collaboration in managing this case.
Finally, in 30 seconds, what are we doing about decriminalizing people who attempt suicide? Because if we can decriminalize it, then they can get more help. You don't have much time.
Yes, what can we do? At SOPIN, I told you earlier that what we have tried to do there, we have tried to collaborate with law enforcement agents, that rather than think somebody who attempts suicide or somebody who is trying to jump over the Third Mainland Bridge should be taken to prison or to court, rather present him to a mental health professional first, present him to the hospital. which they have been trying to do, understanding that there is a mental component.
So they do an evaluation?
Yes. At the point of presentation, there's an evaluation, and then we're able to assess and say, okay, was this really a suicide attempt? Is there a mental illness coexisting that had led to this? How do we help this individual?
Okay, so better luck with that.
Thank you.
I'm really rooting for you. Thank you so much for coming to this show.
Thank you for
Dr.
having
Naya
me.
Ndupo.
Thank you.
Thank you. At such short notice too. Thank you for being with us at home. Have a wonderful day. I am Mary Alale Yusuf.